If the moon goddess had truly chosen Victoria, why was his wolf screaming? The question spread through Moonhaven Palace like a whisper no one dared speak aloud. Hundreds of wolves filled the grand ceremonial hall beneath silver chandeliers shaped like crescent moons. The polished marble floor reflected the glow of candlelight, making the entire room shimmer as if it floated beneath a midnight sky. Evelyn Carter stood near the back wall, exactly where she always stood. Unnoticed. Forgotten. Safe. Her pale blue dress was simple compared to the gowns worn by the noble families gathered around her. Beside the throne platform, her older sister Victoria looked radiant in white silk trimmed with silver embroidery. Every eye in the room followed her. Every conversation seemed to circle back to her beauty, her confidence, her future. Evelyn lowered her gaze and folded her hands together. She had spent 23 years living in Victoria's shadow. Tonight would be no different. At least that was what she kept telling herself. A deep horn echoed through the palace. The room immediately fell silent. Then he entered. Alpha King Damian Blackwood walked through the massive silver doors with the calm authority of someone who never needed to demand attention because he already owned it. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black ceremonial attire, he moved with quiet confidence that seemed to bend the atmosphere around him. Every wolf in the room straightened instinctively. Even from across the hall, Evelyn could feel the pressure of his presence. The stories had never done him justice. For months, the kingdom had waited for this night. The choosing ceremony. The night Damian Blackwood would finally name his Luna. Noble daughters from every major pack had traveled hundreds of miles hoping to be selected. Yet everyone already believed they knew the outcome. Victoria Carter. The perfect choice. The perfect future queen. Evelyn watched her sister step forward when her name was called. Applause rippled through the hall. Victoria smiled gracefully and curtsied before the throne. Their parents stood nearby, glowing with pride. No one looked at Evelyn. No one ever did. Damian descended the platform slowly. The entire room held its breath. Victoria lifted her chin confidently. The future seemed written already. Then Damian stopped in front of her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he extended his hand. Cheers erupted instantly. Wolves rose from their seats. Some began clapping before the formal announcement had even been made. Victoria's eyes sparkled with triumph. Their mother dabbed tears from her eyes. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. She smiled because she knew she was supposed to. She smiled because nobody wanted to see disappointment from the sister who had never mattered. Damian's voice carried across the hall. Victoria Carter. I choose you as Luna of the Northern Kingdom. The applause became thunderous. Evelyn stared at the floor, fighting the sting behind her eyes. It was over. Exactly as everyone expected. Exactly as it had always been. But then something changed. Damian's expression hardened. His hand remained extended toward Victoria, yet his body suddenly went still. Completely still. The celebration slowly faded as confusion spread through the crowd. Victoria's smile faltered. Damian's jaw tightened. His silver eyes narrowed slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. The air itself seemed to shift. Evelyn glanced up. For the briefest moment, Damian's gaze moved past Victoria, past the nobles, past the cheering crowd, directly toward the shadows where Evelyn stood. Then a low growl escaped his throat. Not anger. Not frustration. Something deeper. Something instinctive. Damian's wolf had awakened inside him, and it was refusing to accept the woman he had just chosen. The growl vanished as quickly as it had appeared, but the silence left behind felt heavier than the applause that had filled the hall moments earlier. Hundreds of eyes shifted between Damian Blackwood and Victoria Carter. No one seemed to understand what had happened, not even Damian. His expression remained controlled, yet something troubled flickered behind his silver eyes. Victoria forced a smile and gently placed her hand in his. The court musicians, uncertain at first, resumed playing. Conversations slowly returned. Laughter followed. The ceremony continued. To everyone else, the moment was already forgotten. To Damian, it was not. Deep inside, his wolf remained restless. Not angry. Not frightened. Refusing. The sensation unsettled him. Never in his life had his wolf challenged a decision made by his human side. The bond between them had always been absolute. Yet now a strange resistance lingered beneath his calm exterior. Victoria stepped beside him as the nobles approached to offer congratulations. She answered every greeting flawlessly. Her smile was elegant. Her posture was perfect. She looked exactly like a future Luna should. Damien watched her carefully. Everything appeared right. Everything should have felt right. But it did not. Across the hall, Evelyn quietly slipped toward the balcony doors. The celebration had become difficult to endure. Every cheer reminded her that Victoria had won exactly what everyone expected her to win. The cool night air greeted her as she stepped onto the marble terrace overlooking the palace gardens. Silver moonlight covered the fountains and hedges below. For the first time all evening she could breathe. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared toward the distant forest. The music from inside became a faint echo. She told herself she was happy for Victoria. She truly wanted to be. Yet the ache inside her chest refused to listen. Behind her, the palace celebration continued. Inside the grand hall, Damien accepted another round of congratulations from visiting alphas and council members. Then suddenly his wolf stirred again. Stronger this time. The reaction was immediate. A strange calm washed through him. The tension disappeared. The resistance faded. For one brief moment, everything felt balanced. Damien froze. His gaze drifted toward the balcony doors. The feeling vanished. Instantly, his wolf became restless once more. A crease appeared between Damien's brows. Victoria noticed. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. Damien shook his head. Nothing. It was a lie. He rarely lied. Yet he could not explain what he was feeling because he did not understand it himself. The rest of the evening passed under a growing cloud of uncertainty. Several times he experienced the same phenomenon. Peace would appear unexpectedly, then disappear. Each occurrence seemed connected to a specific direction within the palace, a specific presence. Near midnight, the final guests began leaving. The celebration gradually faded into quiet conversations and farewell ceremonies. Victoria was escorted to the royal wing reserved for future Luna candidates. Their families could barely contain their excitement. Evelyn remained invisible throughout it all, exactly as she preferred, or so she told herself. Damien stood alone in one of the upper corridors overlooking the palace grounds. The moon hung high above the kingdom. Cool wind drifted through an open window. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence. Then his wolf finally spoke. Not with words exactly. More like instinct given shape. More like certainty. One truth repeated itself again and again beneath his thoughts. This is wrong. Damien opened his eyes immediately. His heartbeat quickened. Somewhere within the palace walls, an answer existed. Somewhere something had gone terribly wrong. And for the first time since becoming Alpha King, Damien Blackwood was no longer certain he had made the right choice. By sunrise, the palace had already begun reshaping itself around its future Luna. Servants hurried through marble corridors carrying bolts of fabric, trays of jewelry, and stacks of official documents bearing the royal seal. Everywhere Victoria Carter went, people smiled. People bowed. People praised her grace, her beauty, and the bright future they believed she would bring to the kingdom. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. Evelyn watched it all from a distance. The morning light spilled through the palace windows as she quietly arranged fresh flowers in one of the receiving rooms. Nobody had asked her to help. Nobody had ordered her to work. Yet standing still felt worse. Keeping busy gave her something to focus on besides the emptiness she carried inside. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned and found her mother approaching. The older woman barely glanced at the flowers. "There you are," she said. "Victoria needs assistance preparing for this afternoon's council presentation." Evelyn lowered her eyes. "Of course." Her mother nodded as though the answer had been expected. "The royal advisors want her introduced formally to the kingdom's leadership. Make sure everything is perfect." Then she left. No thank you. No smile. Just another responsibility. Evelyn released a slow breath and returned to her work. Some things never changed. An hour later, she stood inside Victoria's new suite in the royal wing. Sunlight poured through enormous windows overlooking the palace gardens. The room itself was larger than the Carter family home. Victoria sat before an ornate mirror while attendants adjusted her hair and measured fabrics for future ceremonial gowns. Her reflection practically glowed with happiness. "Can you believe it?" Victoria asked as she caught Evelyn's eye in the mirror. "Everything feels unreal." Evelyn forced a small smile. "You deserve to be happy." Victoria's expression softened. For a moment she almost looked guilty. "I know this has been difficult." Evelyn immediately shook her head. "It is your day." The attendants continued working. The conversation ended there. Neither sister knew what else to say. Across the palace, Damien sat through a strategy meeting with his council. Maps covered the long conference table. Advisors discussed trade routes, border agreements, and preparations for the Luna presentation ceremony scheduled later that week. Damien heard every word. Yet somehow none of it stayed with him. His attention kept drifting. Several times he found himself staring toward the windows overlooking the eastern gardens. His wolf remained unsettled. Not aggressive. Not distressed. Simply dissatisfied. One of the senior counselors noticed. "Your Majesty?" Damien blinked. "Repeat that." The advisor exchanged concerned glances with the others before continuing. Damien listened. Or tried to. But deep inside, the same quiet resistance remained. Later that afternoon, Victoria arrived at the council chamber for her formal introduction. Noble families filled the gallery seats. Advisors lined both sides of the room. Cameras from royal media offices prepared to document the event for every pack in the kingdom. Victoria entered confidently. Applause followed immediately. She looked every bit the future Luna. Damien stood beside the throne platform waiting for the ceremony to begin. Then, without warning, a familiar sensation swept through him. Calm. Complete and undeniable. The tension vanished. His wolf relaxed for the first time all day. Damien looked around instinctively. His eyes scanned the crowd, the advisors, the nobles, the guards. Then he saw her. Evelyn had entered through a side door carrying a folder of presentation documents requested by the council secretary. She remained near the back wall, unnoticed by almost everyone. The instant she stepped inside the room, the strange peace settled over him. Damien stared. A second later, Evelyn handed off the documents and quietly turned to leave. The moment she disappeared beyond the doorway, the feeling vanished again. Damien's heartbeat quickened. This was no coincidence. His wolf fell silent for several seconds before delivering the same unmistakable certainty. Not her. Damien slowly turned toward Victoria standing proudly beneath the royal banners. Then his gaze drifted back toward the door Evelyn had just exited. For the first time, a question formed that he could no longer ignore. That night, Damien Blackwood dreamed of a woman he could not see. Moonlight covered a quiet forest clearing. Silver leaves drifted through the air. Somewhere nearby, soft laughter echoed between the trees. He followed the sound instinctively. Every step felt familiar, as though he had walked this path before. A woman stood ahead of him beside a crystal stream. Her figure was blurred by the light. Her face remained hidden no matter how hard he tried to focus. Yet one thing was unmistakable. Peace. The same calm his wolf had been desperately searching for surrounded her like a gentle glow. Damien reached out. Before his hand could touch hers, the dream shattered. He opened his eyes in the darkness of his royal chambers. The first pale hints of dawn filtered through the curtains. His heart was racing. For several seconds he remained motionless, staring at the ceiling. Then he sat up slowly. The feeling from the dream lingered. So did the frustration. He had seen countless faces throughout his life. Yet the one face he needed remained hidden. Across the palace, Evelyn began her morning long before sunrise. She preferred the early hours when the corridors were quiet and expectations had not yet begun pressing against her shoulders. A cool breeze followed her as she walked through the eastern gardens carrying a small basket. Dew sparkled across the flowers. Songbirds filled the air with gentle music. Here, away from court politics and royal ceremonies, she could almost forget everything. Almost. She stopped beside a rose bush and smiled faintly at a small injured sparrow perched beneath the leaves. The bird appeared frightened but unharmed. Evelyn knelt carefully. "You are all right," she whispered. Her voice was soft enough not to startle it. Slowly the bird relaxed. Moments later it fluttered onto a nearby branch before disappearing into the brightening sky. Evelyn watched it go. Then she returned to gathering flowers for the palace arrangements. Unaware that someone was watching, Damien stood on a distant balcony overlooking the gardens. He had come searching for answers. Instead, he found himself observing Evelyn Carter. There was nothing extraordinary about the scene. No ceremony. No audience. No effort to impress anyone. Yet his wolf grew unusually calm. Damien frowned. Every instinct told him this should not matter. Victoria was his chosen Luna. The kingdom expected their union. The path ahead had already been established. And yet every time Evelyn entered his awareness, something inside him settled. The sensation was becoming impossible to ignore. Later that afternoon, preparations began for the upcoming Harvest Festival. The event would bring nobles and pack leaders from across the territory to celebrate the future Luna. Victoria naturally became the center of attention. Advisors surrounded her. Designers presented gown sketches. Journalists requested interviews. She handled everything beautifully. Still, cracks had begun to appear. Tiny cracks nobody else noticed. During one planning session, Victoria spoke enthusiastically about public appearances and celebrations. Damien listened politely, yet his wolf remained silent, empty, detached. Then a servant entered carrying tea trays. Evelyn followed behind, helping arrange refreshments for the guests. The reaction was immediate. Warmth flowed through him. Not excitement, not attraction, recognition. His wolf stirred for the first time all afternoon. Damien nearly dropped the document in his hands. Evelyn placed the final cup on the table and quietly excused herself. Seconds later she disappeared through the doorway. The warmth vanished. Damien stood abruptly. Several advisors looked up in surprise. "Your Majesty," one asked. Damien did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the empty doorway. Somewhere deep inside, his wolf finally pushed harder than ever before. Not through emotion, not through instinct. Through certainty. Find her. The command echoed through his entire being. And for the first time Damien realized he was no longer searching for a reason to doubt. He was searching for the truth. The Harvest Festival arrived beneath clear autumn skies and fields of gold stretching beyond the palace walls. Hundreds of visitors gathered throughout Moonhaven. Colorful banners fluttered above the streets. Music drifted through the air. Children laughed as merchants filled the town square with games, food, and handmade crafts. To the kingdom it was a celebration. To Victoria Carter, it was her first public appearance as the future Luna. Every camera seemed focused on her. Every noble wanted a conversation. Every advisor reminded her to smile. Victoria handled the attention with practiced elegance. Beside her, Damien Blackwood remained composed as always. Yet his attention wandered more than anyone realized. Throughout the morning, his wolf remained restless. Not uncomfortable. Waiting. Searching. The sensation followed him through every speech and ceremony. By early afternoon, the royal procession entered the festival grounds. Crowds lined the pathways, eager to catch a glimpse of their future rulers. Children waved eagerly as Victoria greeted them with warmth and confidence. The public adored her. It should have reassured Damien. Instead, the strange emptiness returned. Several hundred feet away, Evelyn moved quietly between volunteer stations helping festival workers coordinate supplies. Nobody had assigned her an important role. Nobody expected much from her. She preferred it that way. While the royal celebration occupied the center of attention, Evelyn spent most of her time helping where she was needed. Carrying water, organizing seating, guiding lost visitors. The work kept her mind busy. It also kept her away from Damien and Victoria. Near the edge of the festival grounds, a sudden commotion drew attention. A temporary decorative archway near the children's activity area had shifted unexpectedly after a strong gust of wind. It was not dangerous, but several young children became frightened and confused as volunteers rushed to stabilize it. Most adults froze for a moment, unsure how to react. Evelyn did not hesitate. She immediately crossed the lawn toward the children. Her calm voice carried over the noise. "It is all right. Everyone step this way." The children responded instantly. One little girl clung to Evelyn's hand. Another began crying until Evelyn knelt beside him and offered reassurance. Within minutes, the situation settled. The volunteers secured the display. The children returned to their activities. The entire incident ended without harm. Most people quickly moved on. Damien did not. From across the festival grounds, he had witnessed everything. Not because the event itself mattered, because of what happened inside him while watching. The moment Evelyn moved toward those frightened children, his wolf surged awake. Pride, relief, recognition, emotions so powerful they nearly stopped him in his tracks. Damien stared. Victoria was standing beside him. Yet his wolf reacted to someone else entirely. Someone who had not sought attention. Someone who had not even realized she was being watched. Across the lawn, Evelyn laughed softly as one of the children handed her a flower crown woven from autumn leaves. The smile that appeared on her face was genuine, unforced. For a brief moment, she looked lighter than Damien had ever seen her. Then she glanced up. Their eyes met. The distance between them could have been 100 feet. It did not matter. The reaction was immediate. Calm spread through Damien so completely that he nearly forgot where he was. The noise of the festival faded. The pressure of the crown disappeared. Everything became quiet. Then Victoria stepped closer to him, speaking about the next scheduled appearance. The connection broke instantly. His wolf withdrew again. Damien felt the loss so sharply that it startled him. Something was happening. Something impossible to explain. Later that evening, as the festival lights began glowing beneath the darkening sky, Damien stood alone on a balcony overlooking the celebration. Below him, thousands of lights sparkled like stars across the kingdom. His wolf finally spoke again. Not with uncertainty this time. Not with doubt. With a name. Evelyn. Damien closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could no longer pretend he had not heard it. The name echoed through Damien's thoughts long after the festival ended. Evelyn. It was impossible. Illogical. Dangerous. Yet every attempt to dismiss it only made the certainty stronger. 3 days remained before the official moon trial, the ancient ceremony that would formally confirm Victoria as Luna before the kingdom. The council considered it a formality. The royal family had already begun finalizing preparations. Invitations had been sent. The palace buzzed with excitement. Everyone believed the future had already been decided. Everyone except Damien. Sleep became increasingly difficult. Each night the same dream returned. The same moonlit forest. The same silver stream. The same faceless woman standing just beyond reach. Yet with every passing night new details emerged. He could hear her voice now. Soft. Calm. Familiar. He could not make out every word, but one thing remained constant. Whenever she spoke, his wolf became completely at peace. Then he would wake before seeing her face. On the 4th night, the dream changed again. The woman turned slightly. Moonlight touched strands of pale hair moving gently in the breeze. Damien stepped closer. His heart pounded. Just before he could finally see her face, she whispered a single word. Damien. He woke instantly. Breathless. The room was silent except for the distant sound of rain against the palace windows. Yet this time he knew something he had not known before. He recognized the voice. Not because he had heard it often, because he had been hearing it for weeks. Evelyn. Across the palace, Evelyn was preparing to leave. The decision had taken days to make. Every corridor reminded her of Victoria's success. Every celebration reminded her that she did not belong there. Remaining at Moonhaven had become unbearable. Her family barely noticed her anymore. The palace certainly did not. Once the moon trial ended, Victoria would officially become Luna. There would be no place left for Evelyn in this story. So she quietly packed her belongings. Not much. A few dresses. Several books. A framed photograph from childhood. She planned to leave the morning after the ceremony. No dramatic farewell. No announcement. Just a quiet departure. That evening, she visited the palace library one final time. It had always been her favorite place. Tall shelves stretched toward the ceiling. Warm lantern light reflected across polished wood floors. The scent of old books wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She wandered between the aisles slowly, memorizing everything she would soon leave behind. On the opposite side of the palace, Damien stood before Elder Rowan, one of the kingdom's oldest historians and spiritual advisors. Few wolves knew more about mate bonds and moon goddess traditions than Rowan. Damien rarely sought advice. Tonight he made an exception. Can the moon ever reject a chosen Luna? Damien asked. Rowan studied him carefully. The moon does not reject. It reveals. Damien remained silent. The elder continued. A wolf can be mistaken. A human heart can be mistaken. The moon never is. The answer settled heavily between them. Damien stared into the fire burning nearby. And if a wolf recognizes someone unexpected? Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly. Then ignoring it usually creates suffering for everyone involved. Silence followed. The rain outside grew stronger. Finally Rowan leaned forward. Tell me honestly, has your wolf spoken a name? Damien's jaw tightened. He had not told anyone, not even himself. Yet somehow the elder already knew. Several long seconds passed. Then Damien answered quietly. Yes. Rowan nodded once, as though confirming something he had suspected all along. Then stop searching for reasons why it cannot be true, he said. Start asking why it is. Damien left the library wing deep in thought. As he rounded a corner, he caught sight of someone walking between the towering shelves ahead. Pale hair. A simple blue dress. Evelyn. She disappeared behind a row of books before he could call her name. Yet his wolf surged with unmistakable urgency. Find her. Because somewhere within the palace, while one woman prepared to become Luna and another prepared to disappear forever, destiny was rapidly running out of time. The moon trial began beneath a sky so clear that every star seemed to be watching. Long before sunset, thousands of wolves filled the ancient amphitheater carved into the hills beyond Moonhaven Palace. Silver banners lined the stone pathways. Torches flickered in the evening breeze. At the center of the arena stood the moonstone altar, a sacred relic older than the kingdom itself. According to legend, the moon goddess used the altar to reveal truths that no wolf could hide from. Tonight, the kingdom expected a celebration. No one expected a revelation. Evelyn sat quietly among the invited guests near the back rows. She had almost left that morning. Her bags were packed. Her plans were made. Then Victoria had asked her to attend the ceremony. Just once. Just for support. Evelyn could not refuse. So she stayed. One final day. One final goodbye. Below, the royal procession entered the amphitheater. Applause thundered across the crowd. Damien Blackwood walked beside Victoria Carter beneath a canopy of silver lights. To the public, they looked every bit like the future rulers of the kingdom. Yet Damien felt none of the certainty expected of him. His wolf had been silent all day. Not calm. Waiting. As if anticipating something inevitable. Elder Rowan stepped forward onto the altar platform. His voice carried easily through the amphitheater. Tonight before the moon goddess and before the kingdom, truth shall be revealed. The crowd cheered. Victoria smiled confidently. The ceremony proceeded exactly as tradition demanded. First came the vows. Then came the blessing. Finally, the sacred confirmation. An attendant carried forward a crystal vessel containing water gathered from the moon spring, a source believed to reflect the will of destiny itself. The final step was simple. The future Luna would place her hand above the vessel. If accepted, the water would glow silver. The kingdom would witness the blessing. Victoria stepped forward gracefully. The crowd watched with excitement. She extended her hand above the crystal bowl. Silence settled over the amphitheater. Everyone waited. Nothing happened. A few confused whispers appeared among the spectators. Victoria maintained her smile. Surely it only required a moment. Several more seconds passed. Still nothing. Elder Rowan frowned slightly. He motioned for patience. Victoria tried again. The vessel remained dark. The whispers grew louder. Damien felt his pulse quicken. His wolf was awake now. Alert. Watching. Victoria's confidence finally began to crack. There must be some mistake, she said softly. Rowan studied the vessel carefully. Then he looked toward the sky. The moonstone has never failed, he said. Unease spread across the arena. No one understood. No one wanted to understand. Then a sudden breeze swept through the amphitheater. The torches flickered. The surface of the crystal water rippled on its own. Several gasps echoed through the crowd. Rowan's eyes moved slowly across the audience. Then he stopped, directly on Evelyn. For a moment she thought he was looking past her. Then he raised his hand. "Come forward, child." Evelyn froze. Every head turned toward her. Her heart nearly stopped. "Me?" Rowan nodded. "Please." Confusion spread through the crowd. Victoria stared in disbelief. Evelyn wanted to refuse, wanted to disappear. Yet somehow her feet carried her down the stone steps toward the altar. The entire kingdom watched. Damien watched. His wolf surged with unmistakable certainty. Evelyn reached the platform and stopped beside the vessel. Rowan offered a gentle smile. "Place your hand above the water." Her fingers trembled. Slowly she obeyed. The instant her hand hovered above the crystal bowl, silver light exploded across the surface. The vessel illuminated like liquid moonlight. The glow expanded outward, bathing the entire altar in brilliant radiance. The crowd gasped as one. Several wolves rose to their feet. Victoria stepped backward in shock. Damien could not move at all. Every doubt, every question, every dream, every instinct, answered in a single moment. Then his wolf spoke louder than ever before. Not as a whisper, not as a feeling, as absolute truth. "Mate." For several seconds nobody moved. The silver light continued flowing from the crystal vessel, surrounding Evelyn in a soft glow that seemed almost unreal. She stood frozen at the center of the altar, her trembling hand still suspended above the water. The entire amphitheater watched in stunned silence. Thousands of wolves had arrived expecting to witness the confirmation of one future Luna. Instead, destiny had revealed another. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. This could not be happening. Not to her. Not to the forgotten sister who spent her life standing in the background. Not to the woman who had packed her bags and prepared to disappear by sunrise. Across the platform, Victoria looked as though the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Confusion, disbelief, and heartbreak flickered across her expression. The future she had imagined had dissolved in front of the entire kingdom. Elder Rowan stepped forward carefully. His voice remained calm despite the shock surrounding them. "The moon has spoken." The words echoed through the amphitheater. Murmurs spread instantly through the crowd. Some wolves stared at Evelyn with astonishment. Others looked toward Damien, waiting to see what their alpha king would do. Damien did not hear any of them. His attention remained fixed entirely on Evelyn. Every strange reaction, every restless night, every dream, every unanswered question, they all led here. His wolf was no longer conflicted, no longer searching. For the first time in weeks, complete peace settled inside him. It was the same feeling he experienced whenever Evelyn entered a room, the same feeling that vanished whenever she left. Now he finally understood why. Evelyn looked toward the audience. Everywhere she turned, unfamiliar faces stared back at her. Panic slowly crept into her chest. She had never wanted attention. She had never wanted a throne. She certainly had never wanted to humiliate her sister in front of the kingdom. Without thinking, she stepped backward. Then another step. The glowing altar suddenly felt too bright. The crowd felt too large. Before anyone realized what she intended, she turned and hurried away from the platform. Gasps followed her. Damien moved immediately. "Evelyn." His voice carried across the amphitheater. She did not stop. The stone pathways blurred as she hurried toward the gardens beyond the arena. Tears threatened to form, but she refused to let them fall. Everything had changed in a single moment. Nothing made sense anymore. She reached the edge of the moonlit gardens before slowing down. Silver lanterns illuminated winding pathways between flowering trees. The distant sounds of the crowd faded behind her. Finally, she stopped beside a fountain and closed her eyes. "I am sorry," she whispered to no one. "I never wanted this." Footsteps approached behind her. She already knew who it was. Damien stopped several feet away. Neither spoke for a moment. Moonlight reflected across the water between them. Evelyn stared at the fountain. Victoria was supposed to be Luna. Damien shook his head gently. "That is what we believed." She finally looked at him. Everyone is hurting because of me. No, Damien said quietly. Everyone is facing the truth. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. There was no anger, no disappointment, only certainty. For the first time, Evelyn saw no alpha king standing before her. No ruler, no crown, just a man who finally understood something important. Damien took a slow breath. My wolf knew before I did. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. The silence between them felt different now. Softer. Honest. Then Damien offered his hand. Not as a king giving an order. Not as an alpha making a command. Simply as a man asking her to trust him. Do not leave tomorrow, he said. Please. And for the first time since arriving at Moonhaven Palace, Evelyn found herself unable to look away. The kingdom awoke to a different future. By sunrise, the news had traveled far beyond Moonhaven Palace. Every pack, every village, every noble household was speaking about the same impossible truth. The moon goddess had chosen Evelyn Carter. The forgotten sister had become the center of a story no one expected. 3 days later, the coronation of the true Luna began beneath clear skies and silver banners. The palace courtyard overflowed with visitors from across the kingdom. Musicians filled the air with gentle melodies while sunlight reflected from polished stone and crystal decorations. Yet despite the celebration surrounding her, Evelyn still felt like the same woman who had once stood unnoticed in the shadows. As attendants adjusted the silver embroidery on her ceremonial gown, she stared at her reflection and barely recognized herself. Not because of the dress, not because of the crown waiting nearby, but because for the first time in her life she was no longer trying to become someone else. A soft knock came at the door. Victoria entered quietly. The room fell silent. For a moment neither sister spoke. Then Victoria crossed the room and stopped beside her. Her eyes carried sadness but not bitterness. I spent my whole life believing I had to be chosen, she said softly. I thought being Luna would prove I was worthy. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. Victoria smiled faintly. The truth is, you never needed a crown to be worthy. Tears shimmered in both their eyes. Then Victoria gently placed a silver flower into Evelyn's hand. Go show them who you really are. Hours later, the palace bells rang across the kingdom. The courtyard fell silent as Evelyn stepped onto the grand platform beside Damien Blackwood. Thousands of wolves watched. Some remembered the shy woman who avoided attention. Others only knew the story that destiny had revealed. Damien took her hand. Unlike before, there was no uncertainty between them. No confusion. Only peace. Elder Rowan stepped forward carrying the Luna crown, an ancient circlet crafted from silver and moonstone. Before the kingdom and beneath the eyes of the moon goddess, he declared, we honor the one destiny has chosen. The crown settled gently upon Evelyn's head. Applause erupted across the courtyard. Wolves rose to their feet. Cheers echoed beyond the palace walls. Damien looked at her and smiled. Welcome home, Luna. For a moment, everything felt complete. Then something unexpected happened. A warm silver glow appeared beneath the edge of Evelyn's sleeve. Her smile faded. The crowd slowly quieted. Damien noticed it too. A delicate symbol was forming on her wrist. Ancient lines of light intertwined like moonlit vines. Elder Rowan's expression changed instantly. Shock replaced calm wisdom. Several historians standing nearby stared in disbelief. That mark, one whispered. It cannot be. The glow brightened. The symbol continued expanding across her skin before finally settling into a beautiful crescent pattern, unlike anything seen in generations. Rowan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. The legends were true. Evelyn looked at him in confusion. What does it mean? The elderly wolf stared at the mark, unable to hide his astonishment. Then he lifted his eyes toward her. You are not only the true Luna. Silence swept across the courtyard. You are the last moonborn queen. Across the kingdom, celebration transformed into wonder. And high above Moonhaven Palace, the afternoon sky seemed to shine a little brighter, as though destiny itself had only just begun.